You can't build the type of business that you're building, or really any business that's worthwhile, without bags under your eyes.
So you're still an entrepreneur. I mean, I just read about founder and head brewer of Relevance Beer Company. That's entrepreneurial, right?
Yeah.
You starting the Mortgage Marketing Expert. That's entrepreneurial. So I guess the message is you can be entrepreneurial without being a full-blown entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Phil Treadwell, welcome. I've been waiting for this for a long time. I am excited to sit here and have a conversation with you. So, welcome. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to talk to you, but I personally don't know where to start because I have this list of all these things, right? These qualifiers. Like, I don't know one that should just be like he's successful, just listen to him. But so national director, so your big full-time gig is national director of sales innovation at Thrive Mortgage. So that's
Correct.
number one. And we'll come back to that. And you're wearing a Thrive shirt today. Founder and host of the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast. Mm-hmm. That's significant. Been doing that for a few years. Co-founder of the Industry Syndicate Podcast Network. I think that's newer, I believe.
It is.
And then founder and head brewer. This is a really exciting one. We talked about bourbon. Founder and head brewer of the Relevance Beer Company.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's so many more things, but I'm going to stop there because I want to talk to you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the cool intro, because I've been looking forward to doing this. I've done a lot of podcasts, and there's some that you're excited to do, and there's some you're like, yeah, man, I can't wait to do. This has been one of, my friend. We've had some pretty cool conversations, and ready to replicate one of those conversations here on the podcast. But yeah, man, I've always had my hand in a lot of different things. I think it's probably appropriate to this necessary entrepreneur thing. I'm this product of, my dad was a builder and my mom was a teacher. So I'm kind of this mix of entrepreneurship meets academia. And I've just always had this bug where even if I have like a main full-time gig, even if I love it and I'm successful at it and passionate about it, I've always kind of got this little side gig over here going on. It's just kind of the way I'm wired.
So entrepreneur, so you feed right into it. You're like, there's a reason why your podcast is the Mortgage Marketing Expert. So you fed right into it. So the necessary entrepreneur is a purpose that we named it this, but entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur, what's it mean? It's like this hot topic that everybody thinks they want to be one now. It used to be we all wanted to be sports players when we were young growing up. Now everybody wants to be an influencer, an entrepreneur. What's that mean to you, and how does that relate to the world, you think, right now?
Well, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, because at this point in my life, I'm not a pure entrepreneur. Like a pure entrepreneur, something that you're building, that it's all that pays you, it's all you think about, it's all you focus on. But for me, entrepreneurship is about innovating and creating or bettering on what came before you. And I think that for me, entrepreneurship goes above and beyond just being self-employed. If you're self-employed, that's cool. You own your job. Very few people can tell you what to do or not to do. And people are like, oh yeah, I'm my own boss. Not if you have clients. If you have clients, that you're still going to have a boss. So just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you don't have a boss. Entrepreneurship means that you're sacrificing parts of your life to create something else in this other part of your life. And I feel like I have a lot of entrepreneur tendencies, and there's been times in my life where I've lived that pure entrepreneur lifestyle. But right now, I own some businesses and founded businesses, and like to take some entrepreneur traits. But to say that I'm a pure entrepreneur right now is not true. And so I don't want to try to categorize myself with those who are, because those who are, my hat's off to them, because what it takes to truly be an entrepreneur is probably more than most people are willing to give, which I think is the other part of your question. It gets thrown around a lot. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. And as Gary Vee says, in the 80s, that just meant you couldn't find a job, right? But anymore, people see planes and, vacations and cash and this stuff. And If that's what you think entrepreneurship is, you've absolutely missed the boat, because really what entrepreneurship is staying up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then getting a couple 2 or 3 hours sleep and getting up the next day and doing it all over again, and missing family functions, and not taking vacations, and sacrificing your life and hobbies for this thing that you're so, I don't even want to say passionate about, you're so driven to create, that you can't not put every waking moment and resource into this because you just believe in its cause so much.
So can you do it without these bags?
You have the entrepreneurship bags, and see, my wife and I did take a little long weekend, so you notice I don't have as many bags right here. That's why I say I can't categorize myself as a pure entrepreneur right now. I'm not gonna to wear that badge whenever I've not earned it. But I do work a lot of hours, and to my wife's credit, we spend a lot of time sewing into our businesses and really trying to help grow the vision of what we have. And sometimes we have to take a few days and reset ourselves. So, but no, you can't build the type of business that you're building, or really any business that's worthwhile, without bags under your eyes.
So you're still an entrepreneur. I mean, I just read about founder and head brewer of Relevance Beer Company. That's entrepreneurial, right?
Yeah.
You starting the Mortgage Marketing Expert. That's entrepreneurial. So I guess the message is you can be entrepreneurial without being a full-blown entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Right? So where's the success defined? Like, I am a true advocate of people taking action and getting started, whatever you're going to do, but especially in entrepreneurship, because there's so many reasons why we shouldn't. We can come up with them all day long. Failure, fear, all these things. But what's the advice? Because you've been there. You've probably succeeded. There's probably things that aren't on this list that you failed about that you could go into stories about. So what's the advice? For someone that thinks like this is their thing, I'm doing this.
Well, if someone says, I'm doing this, they need to say, I'm doing this because this is a decision that I'm not going to change no matter what happens, not just because it feels good in the moment, right? There's a difference between being motivated and being driven, right? Even passion is an emotion, right? If you're truly driven, you're determined. Nothing is going to change the course. Where the advice comes in is, most people that want to be entrepreneurs are just out of school or have worked a traditional corporate job. And the two things that traditional academia teach you, and I want to say academia because there's a difference in academia and education. I am a huge proponent of education. I'm not a huge proponent of academia. My mom was a teacher. I've seen the master's degrees and all the different stuff that I've had family members, and I've even participated in some of that. The challenge with it is that it teaches you that if you fail every test, fail every quiz, even if you learned everything you got it wrong and could pass the second time, that you're a failure. You're a failure because if you don't succeed over and over and over and over, you don't get the A. You don't succeed and pass that course. That's not how real life works. What happens in real life is you can get kicked in the teeth over and over and over and over and fail over and over. But if you take those lessons and learn something and you continue to educate yourself the right way, that's actually the path of success. So the short way to say it is, most people that want to step out into any entrepreneurial venture or to be an actual entrepreneur, you need to put your big girl pants and your big boy pants on and realize you're going to fail over and over and over and over. And that doesn't mean that you don't get to succeed if you persevere, because it's about consistent and persistent effort over time. And most people aren't patient enough. They think because they failed at this or this thing didn't happen, that they're going to lock it down, that they're, oh, I can't do this. Or they don't realize that the longest journey they're going to take is the one in between their own ears. They've got to build that thing.
That's this unlock that I'm personally trying to, as leading a business and a growing business, that I'm trying to figure out the combination to every day. And the unlock to help people, because I hear and see so many people that say they want to do it, and they're taking the first step of taking action to get a license or get into the mortgage business in your scenario. But what I hear you say is, like, you're asking us to get on the struggle bus here.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like, you're asking us to voluntarily, like, raise our hand and say, let me on, I want one of those seats.
Yes. Yes. I what I'm saying is that if that's what you want to do, you need to knowingly walk into it, knowing you're sacrificing time, effort, sleep, enjoyment, resources for something better than all of those things.
Why
We're
the hell
talking
would
about discipline and delayed gratification and all the other stuff.
you're not selling me on this very well, Phil Treadwell?
I hope not, because people need to realize it's okay to be a great number 3 or a great number 6, and you can still change people's lives and be part of a big business. But because, to your point, we've glorified entrepreneurship, people want to go start their own business, and then they take resources and money. And I'm stealing a little bit of a page out of Gary Vee's playbook here, but I happen to agree. So I'm going to preface by saying he said this first. I'm just regurgitating. They go get investors or venture capital, and they waste these people's money because they're not willing to persevere, and they don't actually know how to do what they say they know how to do. And they come to the end and go, yeah, but I sure learned a lot. Yeah, well, I wonder if that lesson would have been different had it been your own money, or had you actually had to work for those resources to build your business. So yeah, I am trying to discourage people a little bit from it, because for the few successful quote unquote ventures or businesses I've had, there's been 3 to 5 that never got off the ground, or that I wasted a ton of money on, or that I wasted hours or weeks or years of my life doing. But again, I don't see those as failures. I see those as I had to take an education in this thing so that I could come over here and apply that knowledge and not have to take that education again.
So it's only an education that's worthwhile if you pick yourself back up and utilize that failure and what you've learned somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
It's so frustrating to me when I see people quit and they don't utilize that to continue moving forward, and they accept that 9 to 5 again. Like, maybe the 9 to 5 is meant for some people, but it's only meant for you if you don't have the mindset to continue to grow and have a growth mindset. So how do I know how to, if someone comes to us for advice, how do we know how to advise them if they should accept that number 3 spot, that number 7 spot?
Man, that's a great question that I don't know that I know the answer to, other than you've got to have a degree of self-awareness in life in general. And if you're not willing, so one of my first mentors, we talk about this term self-awareness. It's a very formal term, but back in the day, this mentor was a little more rough around the edges. And he just said, the 11th commandment is thou shalt not fooleth thyselfeth, right? Don't lie to yourself, right? We spend a lot of time trying to tell ourselves things that we want to hear because they make us feel good. And very few people want to put pressure on ourselves to find out what the truth is. And so you just need to ask yourself, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to say? And there's been I can say in the last 6 months, year, 2 years, I can think of 4 or 5 things that I've almost dove headfirst into and be like, do I really want to do what it takes to do that? Or is that just a cool idea? Right? Do I really want to, sacrifice my nights and weekends to open up a craft beer brewery that has nothing to do with mortgage and real estate that I've spent 17 years in?
Perfecting.
Like I've actually opened a brewery successful in the past. It's still open. I sold out to my partners when I moved to, down here to Texas. I know what this path is, and I still have to ask myself, is that really what you want to do? Are you okay not doing all of the other, like you could go buy your buddy's beer and go get on a boat on the weekends instead of, going and building, tables in a bar, or brewing beer, or carrying 55-pound sacks of malted barley. Ask yourself the real questions. And so that's a really long way of me saying, I don't know that I have the answer of how to advise someone, other than to say, if you're not adult enough to ask yourself the hard questions and answer them honestly for yourself, then yeah, you probably need to go work a 9 to 5 until you're willing to ask yourself the hard questions that you're going to answer truthfully to.
So when you were growing up, did you always listen to your parents?
Of course. Didn't everyone? Absolutely not. Of course not. We all have this rebellious side. It's I have daughters. If there's a guy that they're, thinking about dating that I don't like, I don't be like, I don't like that guy. I just be like, oh yeah, nice kid. Because you gotta. We inherently want to do the opposite of what our parents tell us to do. So yes, of course, I didn't always listen to my parents.
So how do we not become the parents to people who think they want to be entrepreneurs when we advise them?
That's a great question. And so that's why, I think the way to find out if you're really cut out to be an entrepreneur or not is to go do it, right? Well, I want to help you go be an entrepreneur, and you're going to crash, right? Right. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. You've are grown and built a hugely successful business, and have, I'm sure, had other ventures and things. It's not a matter of if you're going to crash, it's a matter of when, but it's what happens after that that will tell you whether or not they're cut out. And so that may be the litmus test is go do it, understand you're going to take some lumps. And again, not everyone has the same experiences, and not everyone has them quite as bad. My personality type tends to be ready, fire, aim.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I kind of go head charge into it. But part of that is I've developed a set of skills where in the moment I kind of have a good barometer of, oh, I need to bob and weave, or I need to accelerate or slow down or whatnot. If you don't have that, I'm not saying wreck your family future or anything, but if you want to go out and get in business, you need to really have some self-awareness and then go do it. Because sometimes we don't really know what we're made of until we're in that moment.
At 28, I wasn't ready to lead. I wasn't. So as I dig into this, and every book I read and listen to all the experts, and I ask myself these questions over and over, I'm like, what is it really? And what I've broken it down to is it's literally just not quitting.
Yeah.
I look back on all the times that this real estate business that I've built and some other things too, we shouldn't have been around. This thing shouldn't have gotten this far because there's so many other people in the marketplace you look around, and I'm not blaming them or saying they did. I guess they did what was right for them, but I just didn't quit. And it took 10 years of really, really, really small micro growth and this consistent belief that one day we got a chance to be something. And I still feel that. And so I think it's literally like commit and don't quit. And
I totally agree. And I say something similar, which is every mentor I've had, everything I've ever done, every successful person has a version of the way to win, the way to achieve success, and at any degree or level, is to have consistent and persistent effort over time. The time is the variable, right? You have to be consistent. You have to be persistent. Time may be 6 months for this guy over here, and maybe 16 years for you. The question is the juice worth the squeeze? Are you driven? Does it burn bad enough to have this cause, this mission, this business, this thing? As dudes, we like to have land, we like to kick the rock and be like, yeah, that's my rock, right? Do you have that bad enough that you're willing to sacrifice that, even if it doesn't happen? That's the question you have to ask yourself.
And we don't know, do we?
Exactly. Because to your point, you weren't ready to lead at 28.
No.
I wasn't ready to open up a mortgage company at, what was it? I was 24, 25 years old. Mm-hmm. And for all intents and purposes, it was a success in quotes, because the largest lender of the country at the time wanted to recruit me and was willing to buy my company so that I would come to work for them, right? I positioned myself to do that. I wasn't ready to build a company at that age, but I was able to do enough to put myself in a position to continue to progress and learn the next thing.
So why did they want to buy you? I just interrupted, but why'd they want to buy you then? So if you weren't totally successful and you weren't the best leader yet, and the Phil today is way better than the Phil then to lead, why'd they want to buy you?
I think some of the realtors and partners that it was Wells Fargo. I'll just say they were the largest lender in the country at the time in 2008. I'd started a company about a year and a half, 2 years before, which, if you know anything about history of the financial crisis, 2006 was not the smartest time to be opening up a mortgage company. But again, I was more of a ready, fire, aim kind of guy. I think that's been part of my success on a little bit of a tangent is I wasn't smart enough to know the cards were stacked against me. Right. And most of the times I've had the biggest success, that's where the most opportunities have been, is in times where other people are like, no, this is a terrible time. Well, cool. That means everyone's on the sidelines. That means we need to run down the field.
But did you know that then? I challenge you. You couldn't have articulated that then. You just ready, aim, fire. And again, I started this thing in 2007. Right? It just, what you did in mortgage in 06 and what I did, it was horrible. Like I wasn't even smart enough. I wasn't listening to the top economist. I'm just a realtor salesperson that had this hope and dream it could be done better. And in July of 2007, it still felt like we were selling some houses.
Yeah.
Well, in September, we sure weren't.
And that was the thing is in 2008, I've had a lot of mentors, and this particular mentor said, you need to go get 90 new referral partners in the next 90 days. I don't care if they're realtors, financial planners, attorneys. You need to go meet and have a meaningful conversation with 90 new referral partners in 90 days. Called it a 90 and 90, which was a tall order for the record.
Okay.
So as I went and did that, I only made it to about 45 days before I had more business than I knew what to do with, for the record. I never made it to the end. But during that, some of the referral partners that I created relationships with infringed on some of Wells Fargo's business. And their model was recruit by acquisition. If we can't beat them, join them, meaning have them join us. And because the financial crisis, things were crumbling down around us at, mid-20s, I wasn't in a financial position to weather that on my own. And it seemed like the right thing to do. And I did. And again, I am a big advocate of, thinking about what you're doing and having some self-awareness, but nothing can take the place of action. I don't have regrets, even ones that I would never do it the same way. And I know it was a horrible decision, but I can't say that I regret it or I would change it because of the lessons that I've learned. And I'm not saying that was a bad decision. It wasn't. But shortly, a few years after that, I made some really bad decisions, both in my business and personal life. And I wouldn't change it because the lessons I've learned in those mistakes are invaluable to who I am today. And if I didn't get beat up and get my head kicked in through those times, physically and proverbially, metaphorically is probably a better way to say it, I wouldn't get to be who I am today. I wouldn't get to have the friends and relationships and business I have today.
But in the moment of the pain, you sure wouldn't have said it. I won't change a thing.
No, definitely wouldn't. But even through the pain, because I had been through some stuff before, even through the pain, I knew I'm being groomed, right? I'm getting crushed right now, but there's a lesson I need to learn in here. And I tell people that are going through hard stuff, I typically believe they happen for one of two reasons. One, to prepare you for something later on in your life that you need to know that lesson for. Or two, it's because you're going to meet someone else in your life and you're the one that needs to relate them and tell them how to get through what they're going through.
Where'd that mindset come from?
Oh man, a lot of books, mentors, an older brother who was a pretty smart guy and had a pretty good perspective on life. I don't know. I'm a product, really good student. And I've tried a lot of stuff and failed at a lot of stuff and had enough successes here and there that you figured out along the way. I don't think any of this stuff you can't learn if you're willing to, right? If I could turn my camera right now, there is 2 bookshelves full of books. And I can't say I've read them all, but I've probably read 3/4 of them. And some of them I read dozens of times. And I don't know. There's something about taking other people's trials and tribulations and letting them get imparted to you as wisdom. And I tell people all the time, if you read a 200-page book, and you don't have to remember every part of the 200-page book, can you give me 1 or 2 sentences of something it taught you?
100%.
Then cool, it was worth it.
Yep. So, hey, why aren't your books behind you like every other podcaster?
Originally, well, it's funny. Originally, they were. My desk was on this wall, and there was a whole lighting thing with windows where I was trying to get better lighting. And now it's kind of become a cliche. Like everybody has their books behind them. Like, look at all the books that I have. And people laugh at my map because it's not like the nicest map. You can tell it's like laminated. But this map actually means something. My wife, and I've not told this to a lot of people. We're going off a little tangent here, but
I want to hear it.
You asked me to be on, so
you're playing music as you travel the world. I want to hear it.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, it was my wife and I was going through kind of an interesting mental place years ago, and I'm like, I love to travel. Like, there's this huge rock, and I plan on seeing and experiencing as much of it as I can. And I stayed up all night one night, and I went through and Googled, the 10 places you should see before you die, or the 20 best vacation spots, or all the different lists that are out there. And I stayed up an entire night and I took all these lists, and I'm kind of an Excel monkey. I put it all into spreadsheets and I compiled it, and there was some overlap, and I did all this stuff, and I ended different countries. That's what I got to. And so my wife and I was like, okay, that's what our pursuit is in travel, is we're going to go to all these places in all 50 states and go to these 50 different countries. And whether we make it or not isn't the point. It's that we're pursuing that. And this map was the map we originally bought with those little pins to push a pin in every time we went somewhere. And we don't actually actively put the pins in there, but it's just a reminder. Even when I'm sitting here talking about business, that's part of my why. I can look and I can see some of those continents behind my head in the background. I'm like, this is part of the reason that I do what I do, because if I'm good at this, it offers me time and resources to go pursue something I'm passionate about, which is learning. I love to learn. That's why I like to travel. I get to try new places. I get to meet new people. I'm not a guy that goes to the same bar or coffee shop or restaurant or venue or sees the same. I've seen it. That's cool. Let's go find some other place.
You're so much cooler than I.
Anyway. Are you like a Cheers guy, Mark?
So you're basically telling me that all these places where they know my name, that I'm doing it the wrong way?
I don't know, man. I think it's two different philosophies there. There's a lot of places where I repeat business because I want to either have relationships with those people or I do. I mean, I'm not going to a different pharmacy every time I need to pick something up or a different dry cleaners. I'm in DFW. It's a cool area. There's a lot of places to go have breakfast. I'm not going to go to the same diner every time.
So like you being born in Missouri, like you have this fascinating, we kind of, but like I'm sitting here in northern Kentucky. How cool. Overlooking Cincinnati, Ohio. When people hear northern Kentucky, they're like, wow, this guy, huh? But, it's a top 35 metropolitan area in the country. But the funny thing is I've traveled a ton, but I could still see from this building that we're in, and I can see downtown. It's a beautiful view. I could probably go up to the 9th floor above our building and see from how a bird flies where I was born in a vicinity. So you grew up in Missouri, go to the University of Arkansas. I think you've lived in Oklahoma. Now you live in Texas. Is that something everyone should do? Like what perspective from this geographical thing? Is there anything that can be garnered from that? We all stay so close to home like me. I mean, again, I've traveled a lot, but is it just how life evolves? Has that benefited you in any way?
I think it's benefited me. I grew up in Missouri. Like you said, I spent 18 years. I graduated high school. Then I went to University of Arkansas, lived 18 years in Arkansas. Then I did I did about a year in Denver. So I was in Colorado briefly before I came to Texas several years ago. And I do like, I've moved quite a bit, even in those places. Mm-hmm. I do like learning new neighborhoods and living new places and stuff like that. You hear these people that like sell their businesses and sell everything and then live 3 or 4 weeks at a time, like the Airbnb all over the country,
Costa Rica, and all sorts of places.
Dude, I'm telling you, that is like a hot button for me. If I didn't have kids that were in school, we need to have like one place, I would absolutely live like that. And every podcast I did would be in a new location. And I have a good friend of mine who just spent a couple of weeks in Colorado, and now they're going to Greece for like 2 or 3 months. And he's like, dude, you need to come to Greece. Meet me in Greece. I'm like,
you're not going to do it.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
But you're not going to do it.
I might. I'm going to do it just because you said that I won't.
But you're not going to do it. We just figure out human behavior. Hey, not to jump around a ton, but, I'm a sap. I work these just crazy, crazy hours. I think any successful entrepreneur, and success is, it's just based upon your own business, and it's not about how much money you make, but it's like, hey, it's the way that you're deriving an income. It's how you're living your life. It's how people identify you in business. But in the background, I have all these screens, and sometimes I have Spotify up and I'm listening to like a Rogan podcast or Gary Vee, or I might listen to an audio book, but sometimes I put on music, but every once in a while I'll pull up YouTube. And YouTube's playing in the background. I haven't paid for the upgrade, so I have to click skip ads all the time, and it drives me insane. But I'm just like a sap now for some of these America's Got Talent, X Factor, like the Golden Buzzer. It pulls on my heartstrings, and I need some of that in my life.
Yep.
This week I saw a girl that it was probably one of the most touching, one of the most, if we want to call it, heartwarming perspectives. And she said, she was saying, so she came out and she had cancer. I guess she's going to be on this season, or she was on last season. And she had an incredible voice, wrote her own song. It's very tough to get like Simon to be nice to you, right? Because his thing's to be mean. And he was touched and he teared up a little bit. And he said, wow, that must be really hard to go through what you're going through. And there was this pause, the whole crowd and everything. And she said, it was something to the effect, I'm going to be terrible in saying it, but it was something like, you can't wait for life to be good before you choose to be happy. And she's sitting up there, and this girl's been battling cancer for 4 or 5 years. She still has it in her liver. She's up there singing, and you're like, it's these moments of perspective.
Yes.
How in the hell can we adjust or change our mindset? It doesn't have to be exactly like hers, but to have that perspective in our life when things are even great. Like, what do we do to help everyone in our... Because I'm a pretty optimistic guy. I enjoy life. I don't need to make more money. But there's so many people I'm around, I wish I could shoot them with this injection of optimism, injection of belief in themselves, injection of how good we have it in this country. What do we do? Why do you have to be her and going through the life that she has to gain that?
I mean, but that's the thing. Most people have never been in a position either good enough or uncomfortable enough to give them such a different perspective that they're willing to open their mind to that. And I won't beat on self-awareness because I think it's a different thing here, but it's the same concept as if from an entrepreneur's perspective, you need to fall in love with the journey. Success is more of a journey than a destination. My wife finally realized after we got married, there wasn't this end thing that I was pursuing that when I got there, Phil's going to be happy. Phil's happy and does all these things because he enjoys creating these and pursuing the endeavor and this endeavor or business or whatever. The learning and the things that happen through that's what gets me excited. So a more direct answer to your question is she understood that life doesn't have to be good for you to be happy because happiness is a decision, not a destination. And again, it's that journey we take between our ears. So how do we help people do it? We help people realize that whenever you have a success or you have a win, or if you have a pitfall, the bads are never as bad as you think they're going to be, but the goods are never as good as you think they're going to be either. And here's this is kind of an interesting story. There's a guy, he's a big social media personality, Dan Bilzerian. I don't know if you know Dan Bilzerian.
Sure do.
Okay, so all over the
Kicking
place.
ass, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So he's just this guy who, you know, for those who don't know, you can look him up on social media, but he was former military. He's a pro poker player. All he does is travel the world with women in bikinis and have smoke pot,
drive Lamborghinis and live in crazy houses,
all this stuff. He's not what I'm advising you to be, but I'm pointing him out for a reason. He was on Larry King, of all things. Larry King had him on and did an interview, and his Dan's dad was some type of political figure in another country. I don't know the whole story; it doesn't really matter. But when he turned either 16 or 18 or 21 or something, he got this Porsche, this car. It was the car he wanted forever, and he was so excited. And a few years later, he got a little nicer car, but he wasn't as excited about that. It was nicer than the one he had, but he wasn't as excited about that car as he was even the Porsche. And he got even like, you know, this Bentley or a Lamborghini, and he liked them and was excited about them, but he was constantly having to chase that feeling, that dopamine rush, that dopamine hit, because once you achieve these things, you keep thinking that, it's going to be so great if I can take my family on a month vacation, or if I can travel around the world, or if I can have this car or live in this house or have this pool. And we pursue typically things or even experiences, and we forget that once you've done that, it'll never be that good again, even if you do that exact same thing and even more so. I thought that was because my mind has really thought about that a lot. That's all the more reason we need to love the pursuit of never going to be that good. And even when we fail, this huge fear we have, and not to go down the fear train, but
Let's go down the fear train.
It's never that bad. It's never as bad as you want. So, okay, we go down the fear train.
Let's go down. So I posted something today as you think about the fear train, and there was an article on CNBC about, I think, is it Tim Glover, who was the trainer for Michael Jordan. Am I saying that right? He's got his new book.
Tim Grover.
He's going around all the podcasts promoting his book, and he's talking about what success was to both Michael and Kobe. And I shared it on our internal private Facebook group page today, and I put some notes about fear versus doubt. He talks about this, and it is incredible. And it talks about, hey, listen, we're going to have fear every day, but never doubt yourself. And he talked about how Jordan was and stuff, but fear, have it every day of my life in some manner or some way, man. Like, it's there. I don't know how that plays into it. You might disagree with me.
No, I agree.
It's there. You got to have courage.
Yeah, fear. The only way to create courage is to recognize the fear and not care, right? Courage is an absence of fear. Courage is having fear and doing it anyway, right? Mm-hmm. But a couple of easy things that my, again, mentors along the way, fear stands for false events appearing real, right? Or false evidence appearing real. There's all kinds of acronyms you can use. The other thing to think about is biologically, the only fears that we have coming out of the womb are falling and loud noises. Everything else is learned. Falling, loud noises. Those are the only two fears that biologically we are born with. Everything else was created in our mind. So if it was created, theoretically, it can be undone. And we're going to have fear. Fear shows up in different ways. Hesitation, anxiety. It can come out in physical forms, in blood pressure, in filler words. You hear people say, a lot of different things. That's fear, anxiety. That's our body's response to it. My point is, fear can control your life if you let it. And the only way to overcome fear is realize that it's not near as bad as we think it is. And in going through life, as people have asked me, how do you not care, knowing that all these bad things could happen? In most situations, I'll look at what is a realistic worst case scenario. Not even what is the realistic worst case scenario? Okay, well, I mean, that would suck really bad, but am I going to be crushed and is my whole world going to be over? No. And what happens is you make yourself okay. I don't know if this is the right way to do it or not. This is just truth of how I do it.
Yeah.
I look at a realistic worst case scenario and I make myself okay if that happens. And then anything short of that's never that bad. Like, that's legitimately how I do it. And I'm sure that there's probably some psychological reasons why that's a bad thing, but that's how I do it. I look and say, okay, what is in this scenario, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Do you consciously go through that now? Like, do you, or is it subconscious?
It's all subconscious now. I mean, it might pop in and be like, oh, man, that would be bad. We're good, right? Coming on this podcast, I'm a mortgage and real estate guy. What's the worst that could happen? Mark gets a ton of reviews of, why the hell did you have this guy? I just don't know what the hell he's talking about. Or the cool friendship that you have created, you're like, oh my God, I saw through him. He was about, I mean, realistic is a very subjective word, but what's the worst case scenario? I bomb, your entire audience thinks I'm a freaking lunatic, I lose some followers. Okay, is that the end of my world? No, I could go sell cars, right? I could go build houses. I could go do a donut shop. That sounds pretty cool, right? There's some cool donut places around. Like, everybody gets caught up in our minds that if something changes drastically, my world's over. And I think it's because we wrap our identity up in the stuff and the titles and the things. And I'm okay not, like, again, stop my podcast. A lot of my brand is built as a mortgage professional, as a real estate professional, as a podcaster. Take it all away. Cool. You can't take my mind. You can't take the stuff I learned. I'll go do something else. I'll go build an insurance agency. I'll go be a store manager for Walmart or a stock boy. I don't.
Sounds like you need to go to Greece is what it sounds like.
What's that?
Sounds like you need to go to Greece is what it sounds like.
It seems like I need to go to Greece.
Just saying.
I'm just telling you, man, like, there's a mindset to this thing that I think people just need to understand. It's all learnable. It's all teachable. It's all duplicatable. Find the people you admire, find the people who've done what you've done, and learn what they did. And everybody wants a roadmap. And here's the real kicker. That person could give you the roadmap. You and I could write out verbatim, here's exactly what it took for us to win, and give it to someone, and it's still going to be different for them. You have to understand the principles of how it happened and make those decisions for yourself. That's why self-awareness matters. That's why, ready, fire, aim.
All the stuff.
So
what do you think about this idea of only asking advice from people that you'd switch places with? Never ask advice from someone that you wouldn't switch places with.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Why not?
Because not asking for advice and not taking advice are two different things. And now I wouldn't take advice from someone that I didn't respect where they're at in life or had the fruit on the tree. But asking their advice on something is different. And asking someone what they think is an opportunity to learn. One of my favorite quotes is, the mark of a truly educated mind is to contemplate a thought without accepting it as your own. So I want to know what other people think that don't think like me, because if they just thought like me, I wouldn't need to know what they know.
Who's someone in your life that you think's like one of the great ones? So somebody, I brought up, people say Michael Jordan, but who's someone that a lot of people would know, that you think about, that you're like, that's a great one?
John Maxwell.
Why?
He was one of the first really big inspirational figures that I saw live. He was one of the first personal development books I ever read, 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. The very first chapter's on character. There's a line in there that changed my life that said, your talent can take you where your character can't keep you. And I thought that was absolutely incredible. And the thing for me is, he talks about leadership is influence. Guys, if you're listening to this, you're influencing people either positively or negatively, whether you know it or not, whether you want to or not. That's life. And that's leadership. You're leading people down the right path or the wrong path by who you are and what you're doing, because that's influence. And so John Maxwell, for me, has just reframed so many ideas in my mind. So he's one of the all-time greats for me.
Could all of us be John Maxwell?
Could we all be John Maxwell?
Yeah. Could we be that thing that you think why that person has made such a profound impact in your life? And when I said who's the one person, that's the one that rose to the top.
Yeah, and I would say yes, because what John Maxwell has done is he's taken a handful of ideas and concepts and written dozens and dozens and dozens of books about, and not taking away from the genius that he is, the intellect he is, but he's written dozens of books around 3 to 5 of the same core principles. But every book is from a different perspective, and he knows that that's going to hit or resonate with someone differently. And he continues to do it even now. He has enough caliber and enough influence already that he could ride off into the sunset. And I saw him, it was a good 15 years. It was over 15 years after I'd seen him the first time. And I saw him at a smaller event. It was an Entree Leadership. And he spoke and he said, guys, I could come up and give you my sugar stick. Like, I got a lot of really good ones. He starts tearing up. He said, but this one I wrote in the last 3 days, specifically for this room, because my grandkids are now getting old enough that they're starting to actually be able to use some of the principles I teach. And this is what was on my heart and mind. And the guy who'd been doing this for decades and decades and decades got up to another speaking event, in quotes, and was in tears because what he was talking about meant that much to him. But again, what he's teaching isn't revolutionary. He just happened to find 3 to 5 to 10 core principles that mattered to him. And he just kept talking about it consistently and persistently over time until he became this force to be reckoned with. So the short answer to your question is, can anyone duplicate that? I think anyone can. I don't know that a lot of people will, because they're not willing to persevere and go through the stuff that he had to go through. I mean, he's the godfather of leadership for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm. So is everybody's best on any given day, is it good enough?
I'd need more context to answer that.
Okay.
Good enough for what?
You hear these things so often. It's like, just give it your best. It's okay who you are. Your best is good enough. If that's all you got today, that's good enough.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we need to know in life that even your best a lot of times is not going to be good enough. Right?
Why not? We're in a society that maybe that's not politically correct. That's not the right thing. That's not the right answer. So why is it? Why is it not enough?
Because we're not all built to do like this whole thing. You can be anything you want to be. I think that's dangerous. You can't be anything you wanted to be. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was on my way to trying to become a fighter pilot. I realized because I had asthma as a kid, that and I was freaking 6'4", they'd have to cram me in that thing. I wasn't built or created to be a fighter pilot. I really wanted to fly planes. Like I really did. And I think had my parents wrapped my whole life into you can be anything you wanted to be and never showed me that there's a flip side of that coin, that it doesn't always work out though, that could have crushed my whole spirit in life. And I mean, who I became could have ended right there as far as philosophically. And I could have, slugged away at a job for 50 years or whatever. It's the same concept of the 8th place trophy syndrome. I was on she was young, she's a millennial, and we were talking about this concept, and I made a comment around, I think it's ridiculous that we're doing these 8th and 10th place trophies or this participation, like you get an award because you showed up, right? Like that was something to be celebrated. And she said, well, but studies prove that people have happier, healthier, more successful lives if they have higher self-confidence and self-worth. That's where that comes from. Like she's trying to educate me. And I said, yeah, but the problem with that study is the reason people have self-confidence and self-worth is because they've had to overcome something. And so what's happened is you're actually making the situation worse by giving a kid something that he knows that he didn't deserve and then expects him to have self-confidence when he has no confidence because he's never had an opportunity to even try.
And how the hell can you prepare him to deal with adversity if they never have to deal with it?
Exactly.
I would choose, if this life could be perfect and I didn't have to go through the pain that I went through to get here and to grow my mind here, listen, take it away. That's not the human experience. The human experience is life's tough. And if you want to achieve anything significant in your life from being a great parent, I'm sure I don't have kids, you do. But these kids don't come with books. They don't come with instruction manuals. I'm sure there's a lot of failure along the way and some nights where it's like, man, I probably shouldn't have dealt with it that way.
Yeah, man. And with kids specifically, the goal is not to screw them up very much, right? It's not even about raising perfect kids.
Just enough?
It's how do I not screw them up, too much? And I say that tongue in cheek because, I've been through a divorce. My kids have been through quite a bit. My wife and I, we've been married almost 6 years, blended family. And our parenting philosophy is not to be our kids' best friend. It's to help them not only survive, but thrive in a world that was way harder than the one we grew up in. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say a bad word on here or not, but I don't want to raise assholes. Okay. I want to be friends with my kids when they're older. So I'm not friends with assholes. So I want to make sure that they don't have a sense of entitlement, that they know respect, that they understand what they have to say isn't the most important thing being said in a room at any given time.
And they're not going to like you at times because of that. Right?
Exactly.
And that's the part of the adversity.
Yes. Yes, it is. There's a lot of times, like right now, I have one of my kids that we're dealing with a specific thing. She's not going to be super happy with me this summer. She's not. And that's okay, because as I thought through this, the decision that I'm making is the right decision. As much as a dad, I just want to make this better, and I want this to be this way. People think that because it feels good that it's always the right thing, and that's not true.
So I'm going to read a quote here. I just did a screenshot earlier, so I'm not reading my text on my phone or anything. But it's kind of long, but this feeds into it. I didn't know that we were going to discuss this, but I'm hoping that this is true. I'm hoping this isn't just something that showed up on Facebook or whatever. So if not, tell me I'm wrong and slap me down. So the founder of Dubai, supposedly it's Sheikh Rashid. I don't know. We should Google that right now. Mike, you want to Google that and make sure I'm right. was asked about the future of his country, and he replied, "My grandfather rode a camel. My father rode a camel. I ride a Mercedes. My son rides a Land Rover. And my grandson is going to ride a Land Rover. But my great-grandson is going to have to ride a camel again." Why is that, he was asked. And his reply was, "Hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men create difficult times. Many will not understand it, but you have to raise warriors and parasites." So I think the point to that is we hear that so much about wealth skips generations. I think it's that the story of this is if you want future greatness in your life, whether it's entrepreneurial, whether it's being a good spouse, whether it's being a good parent, you're going to have to deal with some adversity. And the sooner you start dealing with it, the more capable you're going to become.
Yep.
And
1,000%.
Right. And so I just see so often a lot of my friends. I can't judge them because I don't have kids myself, but I just see them and I'm like, man, that is such a mistake. That is such a mistake. And I understand the principle. It's like you want their life to be easier than yours. You want them to be more happy. You don't want them to be on the struggle bus as much. But what they're forgetting is the reason why they're giving their kids such a great life is because they went through it.
1,000%.
How the hell as a parent and generationally and as a country, and it went further into there about all the past Roman empires and Greek empires, after 240 years they were gone.
Yep.
We're now over 240 years as America.
Yeah, there's a philosopher that wrote a similar thing like that about countries and how we, from slavery to all these different things back into slavery again. I think there's an element of that for sure. From a to keep it on the kid perspective for a second, my kids have had to overcome things that I didn't have to overcome. And there's things that my wife and I talk about, especially in situations with our exes or with each other or with school or whatever. We could probably step in and make it better. And sometimes my wife and I will even fight about it a little bit. I say fight constructively, of we should step in and fix that. And I very often think, yes, but I'm not going to, because this hurt that they're feeling right now, as much as I want to take it away, this is teaching them something that's going to make them a much better person in life right now. And that is a really, really, really hard thing to do. And I know that there's people listening to this that are going to be disagreeing with me. No, there's other ways they can learn it without them being in pain emotionally. And there's bad byproducts of that and this, that, and the other. You know what? That's fine. We're going to have to agree to disagree. Most of the things that I've done well in, or things that I've learned, have directly come from things where I had to go through it, and I had to feel it, and I had to hurt. And my kids, there's times that I want to step in and make it better, but I don't want to rob them of the opportunity to have the life that they can have. Because isn't that what we're supposed to do? Even as a society, we all sit here and talk about we want to leave the world a better place than we found it. Okay, well, let's stop talking about just cleaning house and stop teaching people to maintain the house that are there. Right? There's all these other layers of an analogy that I could go to, but we're not interested in that. We're interested in what we want, and we make ourselves feel better by talking about long-term consequences and this, that, and the other. But the short-term things that we're doing, I have to keep myself from going, down a political rant. I think we're making mistakes with society today by telling people they can do whatever they want to do, they can be whoever they want to be, and that just because it's hurts, it's bad, or it feels good, that it's good.
It hurts. I said at a sales meeting, there were 100 and something of our agents on our sales call this past week, and I said something to the fact of, we're going to clean our own house before we add on. I don't know how this connects with this, but we moved some agents out who weren't producing, who weren't good for the culture. Doesn't mean that there's not different ways of doing it, but I just said, hey, we're going to clean our own house. If we want to hold ourselves to such a high standard culturally, if we want to really believe that we're standing for something that other people aren't, we better back that shit up, man. And so it doesn't feel good, though. I mean, it doesn't feel good. I had a conversation today with an agent, and I always try to make it. They're not with us anymore. It happened this morning. And I always try to make it. I even told him, I said, hey, listen, I don't know if I'm right. But it's my decision. and it's my job to be the leader, and it's my job to have this difficult discussion. But I said, hey, I still love you. As a person, I still love you. And that's really hard in our industry to do those things, because then they're going to go put their license with a competitor or go do mortgages somewhere else. But I put my arm around him walking out, and I said, hey, I appreciate the time you're here with us. And it was very mutual. It wasn't just us. Like, it's nice when you come to a place where people know it's time to move on, and we know it's time for you to move on. Yeah. And I think it's so rare when we get there. But, you know, there's this piece on we can do tough things in a good, kind way. I really believe we can. And
I agree.
I haven't always. Listen, if I could go back and some people that we've parted ways with, some agents, I'd do it differently. It doesn't mean they culturally should, but I'd do it differently. I'd probably be a little bit nicer. I wouldn't have to win the day. But I think we can do it in a more kind way. But, man, we can't avoid the really tough stuff.
So I have a question for you now. So in those situations, because I think about most of the splits that I've had with companies, or I don't have a lot of quote unquote enemies in the industry. In those situations where there's kind of a bad situation between you and someone else, and you know, hey, there's a way to do this amicably and us go our separate directions, and they don't own their stuff. They don't admit their part in it. It was all you. How do you handle those situations?
It's just my job as a leader to own it, man. And
let's say it's outside of your company.
So outside I work 20 hours a day at my company, but
I just mean like within real estate. Let's say it's a competing company within there, and you're friends with them, but something goes down. There's a big riff. You're wanting to kind of squash the whole deal, but they're not willing to admit their part in it at all. They walk on water. They didn't do anything.
So I'm going to be honest. In this litigious society, it's really tough to do that. It's really tough to take responsibility and rise up in these situations where everybody wants to sue somebody over something and fall on the sword. And I know it's the right thing to do in life, because I now am at a place where I don't expect anyone else to act any different than they have. The only person that's capable of changing or altering this outcome is me. To rise above it, to act better, to act more as a leader, and to be humble about it. And if they win, let them win, man. You know, if I'm confident enough and humble enough. So outwardly, it's tough. And I talk about that. I really hate it, because I find myself in situations sometimes where we're on opposing sides of situations. I pride myself on really being able to step outside and above the entire situation and really see it for what it is, and remove the emotions. But there's times you can't admit fault. I hate to admit it, but there's just times when that's the case. But that's the legal stuff, you know, and I'm glad we could talk about this, because there's not an exact example. So I don't know if that really speaks to it, but I'm getting better. At 42 years old, I'm getting better just as a person in taking responsibilities for situations when even it's not my fault. It's not the company's fault. It de-escalates everything, man. So that's how I don't know if that addresses it. I don't.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it does. I think we're also different people at different stages of life, you know, and coming back to this entrepreneurial venture conversation, I think that my appetite for some of the risk, even with the experience and knowledge that I have now, is probably less than it was 10 years ago or 10 years before that. Right? We think we're invincible, or we don't have anything to lose, or whatever. And my challenge in that, even though I'm admitting my appetite for risk at that level is probably less, that less is still probably 10x the average person. Okay, I do want to throw that out there. So my advice to people in those situations is, you only get one shot at this, right? One of the most toxic things that I don't want to experience at all is regret.
Yeah.
What if I had done that? What if I'd gone out on a limb? What if I'd tried that?
How do you know that's what you don't want?
Because the little bit of regret that I have, and I just said earlier, because I'm not trying to contradict myself, I don't regret any decisions I've made. I don't regret any of the things that I've done.
I'll let you off the hook. I wish I would have been more kind at times. There's times.
Yeah, I agree. What I think I mean is, I think if there is any regret, it's for the things that I didn't do, not the things that I did do.
But you didn't know.
Yeah, Didn't know.
You didn't know. And so
I think that's where it comes in is I don't want to look back at life and have regrets for I had an opportunity to do that cool thing that's going to change lives or go pursue that would have been a heck of a lot of fun and create jobs for people or create income that you can go do cool things over here. I mean, this whole ecosystem goes together. We should be a society of creators and innovators and attempters, not just consumers and takers and, you know, destroyers.
I had this moment, all these things that from reading books and from life experiences, I have a couple of these weird moments in my life that I look back, I'm like, man, why did stuff start going really well for me? And I can't tell you why. I can't tell you exactly why, like what micro decision it was, what compounded where. But there's a couple of these weird, really just moments. There was one probably 10 years ago, and it opens your mind to the possibility of how you can impact people's lives. I left the office at midnight or 1 o'clock. I go across to this Shell station. I had this bad habit of stopping and getting a candy bar or something to drink. It didn't affect you as much at 30 as it does at 42. And so one night, about 1:30 in the morning, walking in my tire, I had a car that wasn't the best car. Then my tire would always go down, and I'd have to put air in it and need to inflate it. And I pulled around back. It's kind of dark for the Shell station. And there was a kid. You could tell he was a kid behind me. And again, this so far, nobody even knows the person or anything. But this was a moment in my life, even though how insignificant it seems. But it was really cold, man. It was like January. And he's going through these trash cans of where people swept out their car. And he's pulling out cans. He's dropping aluminum cans. So you start putting this story together, and I had this moment like, am I in a dangerous situation where that person's so desperate in life that you want to avoid them? Or is this a moment where you could help somebody?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I bet people have made the wrong decision there and their life's turned out bad. But I had this, he looked at me and he didn't approach me. And that gave me some security in the moment. And so I walked over to him. I put this whole thing together. I'm like, this kid's young. He doesn't even look like he should be homeless. And, man, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't. I was in this moment where I'm trying to grind. I didn't have thousands of dollars. Even hundreds of dollars meant something to me. And I walked over there and I said, hey, man, do you need something? I had never done anything like this in my life. Like, I was the guy not to give change to people when they're pedaling on the street. I mean, sometimes I still do. And he looked up at me. He's like, no, man, I'm okay. He wasn't okay. And he wasn't asking me for anything. I said, hey, man, can I get you something inside? Like, can I get you something to drink? You know, do you need something? And he looked at me. He's like, no, man, I'm okay. And I went, hey, where are you sleeping tonight? And he's like, is this guy really asking me these questions? Like, he gave me this look. It was like flipped on me. And he said, under the underpass, man. And I just, in my mind, I was like, what? This kid, who knows what his story is? This shouldn't be happening to him. So I went inside, and I still don't know what to do. I go inside, I come back out, and I said, hey, man, I know there's some hotels right down the street here, and I don't know if it's going to help you or not. I don't even know if you want to, but how about I go down and see if I can get you a hotel room for one night? Like, at least it'll give you this warm bath, at least whatever it'll be. And he's like, you serious, man? I was like, yeah. And he's so excited, he drops his cans, and I put him in my car. Like, it was like a eighth mile down the road. He drops his cans, and I was like, hey, man, get your cans. Like,
You've been working on that, yeah.
Come on, man, get your cans. And so he jumps in. We walk down the road, and the whole story was, it was a moment a selfish moment where I felt really good about myself.
Yeah.
I did. But something changed after that, man. There was something about that moment that changed that I know that kid on that night, I don't know whatever happened to him since, but that really made his life a little bit better. And maybe just a chance that he gave just a little bit of benefit to society that, hey, there's something worth it out. I don't know what it was, but something changed for me. And there's one or two more of those stories, and it opened my mind to trying to do things in a positive way, to try to be kind, to try to make impact on people's lives. So I'm going to make mistakes. There's people that I'm probably not going to treat the right way at times. I don't know the right answer to your question, man. I don't.
Well, I'll tell you this, on that, I have a tie down for it, I promise, but I've got a few stories kind of like that, mine have even been less intentional, but my wife and I like to randomly, anonymously buy people's dinners if we'll see at a restaurant or whatever. And sometimes I think my dad had this joke. You know how when you're at a restaurant and they're like, hey, is there anything else I can get you, or do you need anything else? And he used to say, I don't know, $100 bill, kind of like that or whatever. And this waitress said, oh my gosh, like I've never even seen $100 bill or something like that. It was just kind of a joke in passing or whatever. So gave her my card, ran it. I don't typically keep a lot of cash on me, but I happen to have $100 bill on me. So I tipped her well, tipped her like, 25, 30%, and then put $100 bill in there and just put a little note on there, says, now you've seen $100 bill, and left it, and we were leaving. She chases out after us and said, you don't even understand. This is between what you gave me here. This is going to be the rest of my car payment. Like they were going to come get my car. And again, it wasn't a very busy lunch crowd at this place. And there was another instance like that where we had really tipped a lady, and she was trying to start a business to deliver like needs like groceries and toiletries and stuff to invalids that can't get around. And here's my point. This isn't me, and this wasn't the point of your story either, of patting ourselves on the back. It's when people ask why they should persevere, it's because they can, and they can create a business or income or resources to help other people who can't. Like we have a responsibility to help. And I'm not talking about people that don't deserve it, that aren't trying. I mean, there's legitimate people who are trying. That kid, he could have jumped like, yeah, man, like buy me all this food. No, he was trying to do his thing, right? And so my point is, if we're capable, I feel like we have a responsibility to go and do. These podcasts like this and the marketing thing. I got a lot of stuff. People are like, why do you do? Well, I do selfishly get a lot of satisfaction out of a lot of the things that I do, and a lot of fulfillment. Because another one of my favorite quotes is, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure, right? Part of the way we should all be fulfilled is if we can go create something, go create it. Don't pay yourself anything. Give all the extra. Bonus it to all your employees. What kind of hardworking lives can be? You know what I'm saying? There's all kinds of stuff. I'm not trying to get too philosophical. I'm saying all of this stuff goes together. Entrepreneurship is small business. Small business is the backbone of this country. You can go back to the very beginning of that 240 years. Yeah, we may have some things wrong now, but that's where we started. And way back then, they were sacrificed and they were helping other people. They were doing stuff. And so, man, I think this is really about, always trying to learn, educate yourself, keep a clear head, stay consistent, stay persistent, understand that failure doesn't mean what you think it means. It means that small thing you may have failed at, but it's a numbers game. You fail enough and you get to succeed. It's almost by default. You just have to weather that through. And so that's maybe the original question that you had asked about with this podcast is whether it's someone young or someone that's old. Yes, I think everyone should attempt it so that you can find out, are you supposed to be a number 1 or number 2, or do you need to be a number 6 or number 10? Unless you do it, you're never going to know.
So as we wrap it up, a couple more things here. Does excellence matter? Trying to achieve excellence, does it matter? So what's it mean to you, and does it matter?
I think it's overrated. I think we need to strive for excellence and being great at what we do, but I also think we use it as an excuse. And what I mean by that is, and with my team, we have a kind of a saying, and it's a quote we stole from a book or something that done is better than great, right? Sometimes 70, 80% is good enough, and you just need to move on. And statistically, if you look at okay, good, and then great, there's a lot of effort that it takes to go from that good to great spot, but there's not a lot of return and payoff, or the excellent or whatever. So I think as people on a human level, we need to strive for excellence. But I think in business, we need to keep it in context of sometimes good's good enough, and you don't have to be excellent at it.
So what should we, sitting here as developing a friendship between me and you, what should I ask you for my own selfish knowledge that people don't normally ask you? What should I ask you? Me sitting here, if I was like the question, like, oh, this is what is in Phil's brain that needs to be derived and drug out. So for Mark, not for everybody else listening, whether it's 5 or 500 or 5,000.
Man, that's a tough one.
This isn't a time for humility.
No, I don't know. I'm trying to think of something good because I normally, even if someone doesn't ask me, I find a way to
Like, is it simple as like, Mark,
conversation.
play guitar, it'll matter.
Yeah,
It'll
yeah.
cause you to go to Greece and travel the world. What is it?
No,
because you've done a lot of stuff, man. I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, and as maybe think about it as I wrap up this thing about entrepreneurship. See, the reason why we named this podcast "The Necessary Entrepreneur" is because I love having these conversations. Get the end. I didn't want to be one. I didn't. I just found that the way that other people were doing it around us, they weren't doing it well enough. And if I wanted to be involved in something great and wanted to truly go out and be able to live my best life, I had to create this company, and it was necessary that I did it. And with that, though, what I've grown to understand is there is tremendous responsibility when you become an entrepreneur if it becomes more than one. And the responsibility is the day that someone else believes in you and they sign up to do this thing with us, it needs to be way bigger than us and way bigger than me and way bigger than you. And that's not always easy, But if we can get to a place where we understand that and we live by that value and that principle, you have a chance to live just an amazing, great life, regardless of the money or whatever. So that's my perspective. Now I need to know what Mark Perkins should ask Phil. Am I going to let you off the hook for this?
No, I think that the question that I would probably ask myself, not knowing myself, is what's next, or when is enough enough?
Hey, Phil. What's next?
More
what?
More of it all. I wish I could say that I'll stay in mortgage and real estate forever, but I can't say that.
When's enough enough? Say the word.
Say the word. Is enough.
Say the word.
Never. More.
Never.
Yeah, never. So here's the thing. Like the truth of the matter of what goes on in my head is that it there's always something next, and it's never enough. And it's not about money being enough. Like you said, my wife and I live a great life, and we could continue making what we make or less and be perfectly happy. It's not about that. It's about there's other challenges. There's other things to accomplish. There's other boxes to check off. And I don't even know what some of them are. It's just about, like I said in the beginning, that's what this map is important to me. My boss gives me a hard time about this all the time, but that's why this map matters, is because until I've seen and experienced everything that I can see on this rock, which isn't possible, I'm going to keep pursuing, and I want to learn and try and grow. And a guy told me the other day about a part of Texas that there's this opportunity for housing units. I'm like, let's go do it. We need some affordable houses. Let's go build some houses.
You found another squirrel, Phil.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. Do
you know why we're sitting here talking? This leads to this. Do you know why we're sitting here talking? Like, everything just links to one another, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's because I took a team of people 2 years ago before COVID to the National Association of Realtors Expo in California and spent a lot of money and went out there, and we were searching for something. We're looking for that one idea like you find in the book. And we're like, we don't know what it's going to be, but we're going. Right? And we met a guy named Kyle
Draper.
And developed a relationship there. And then he meets a guy like Phil. And all of a sudden, he introduces me to a guy like Phil. And where all these, I think that's why it's important to say never. Because where these little minor actions and doing new things, they lead to incredible places and meeting and the experiences we gather. And so I cut you off, but I think I bailed you out a little bit.
You totally did.
Okay.
What's next is more, and when is it enough? Never. Because that's how I'm wired. Yeah, I can't change that.
So this really is the final question. So you can get off here and go spend great time with your family.
All right.
How does a guy like you end up talking to a guy like Gary Vee? How does that happen?
I asked. I mean, I could tell you the whole long story of what led to the ask before and after. But in short, when it comes to podcasts, when it comes to interviews, collaboration, high 90 percentile have success rate if you'll just ask. And that's how it happened.
Is that the principle to this wrap up of this entrepreneurial business life conversation?
You can't be mad about results you didn't get from work you didn't do.
I am so happy that I got to have this conversation with you, man.
Man, I am happy that I got to have this conversation with you.
Thanks for taking the time. It's fantastic. Michael put up all the stuff on how people are going to find you. I don't think there's any way to listen to this conversation without people wanting to further engage and listen to all the podcasts that you've been on, that you're going to continue to be on, however you rebrand yourself in the future and what happens. So if they want to find you, like, he'll put all the stuff up, but it's the Mortgage Marketing Expert. Is that you talking about all things mortgage, interviewing top mortgage people? What's that about? What can people experience if they go listen to those episodes?
Yeah, it started with me interviewing people in the mortgage industry who are experts, who are going to help other mortgage professionals build their business. It's turned into a similar podcast, maybe not quite as in depth as this, but about talking about success principles, leadership principles, work ethic. All mortgage real estate professionals, insurance professionals, financial professionals. We have a lot of people outside of that audience. We started very niche and scoped out, but the Mortgage Marketing Expert podcast does talk some tactics on how people can build their business in the mortgage industry, but it's more about mindset. It's more about success principles and what people do to grow. That's the easiest way to find that. In any wherever you listen to podcasts, just search Mortgage Marketing Expert or go to mmepodcast.com.
And then the Industry Syndicate Podcast Network. Just give us a little touch on that. That's newer.
Yeah, in short, it was a collaborative of a lot of podcasts in mortgage and real estate. We had a bunch of us that we'd get all asked the same question, where we find other shows like yours. So we put a bunch of shows together. We have about 30 across mortgage and real estate. And if you're looking for other good shows in the industry, that's a great place to find it.
Perfect, man. We love you. Thanks for taking the time. Have
Talk
an amazing
soon.
rest of whatever 2021 brings us.
Sounds great, my friend.
All right, man.